I was looking at an old photograph today of a man I've never met, but who shares my last name. He was standing in a field of tall grass somewhere in the late 19th century, and he had this expression on his face that I see in the mirror every morning at 2 a.m. It is a look of waiting for something that hasn't arrived yet. A kind of quiet, patient expectancy that seems to be baked into the very shape of the brow. It made me realize that we are not just our own memories. We are a repository for every unfinished thought and every unexpressed emotion of the people who came before us. We walk around thinking we're writing a new book, but most of the time, we're just the latest chapter in a very long, very complicated novel that started before the first word was ever spoken. If you feel a sudden wave of grief for no reason, or a surge of triumph while standing in a place you've never been, maybe that isn't yours. Maybe you're just the one holding the antenna when the signal finally arrives from 100 years ago. We are biological time machines. Our DNA is a scroll written in the language of chemistry and light. And just because we can't consciously read the text doesn't mean the body isn't following the instructions. Every fear you have that feels unearned is likely a survival instinct passed down from an ancestor who actually faced the wolf you only dream about. You aren't broken magic makers. You are just highly informed by the ghosts in your marrow. In a world full of noise, trust the signal. If you're hearing this, you've already found it. The algorithm didn't just suggest this. It recognized the frequency you're emitting and matched the resonance. This is Dove and Serpent Radio. There is a small lizard in the deserts of the Southwest called the green iguana. And it has something that scientists call a parietal eye. It's literally a third eye on the top of its head. It doesn't see images like we do, but it senses light and movement. It's a vestigial organ, a remnant of a time when the world was much more dangerous from above. We have something similar, buried deep in the center of our brains, the pineal gland. It's shaped like a pine cone, and it regulates our sleep, our wakefulness, our sense of time. Some people call it the seat of the soul. I like to think of it as our own internal lighthouse, the part of us that stays awake when the rest of the world goes dark. It's that part that knows when you're being watched. It's the part that picks up on the frequency of the room before you even step inside. For the magic makers out there listening, you know that feeling when the air in a room changes, when it becomes thick with an energy you can't name. That is the I in the brain waking up. That is the serpent in the skull recognizing a pattern that the eyes missed. We spend so much of our lives trying to ignore this primitive input, favoring the logical, the digital, the named. But the pineal gland doesn't care about our spreadsheets. It cares about the vibration of the collective energy. It is listening to the music of the spheres while we are distracted by the static on the screen. I think about the way starlings fly in those massive, swirling clouds called murmurations. If you've ever seen one, it's breathtaking and slightly terrifying. Thousands of birds moving as a single liquid mass, turning and diving with a precision that seems impossible. There's no leader. There's no one bird giving orders. They're all just responding to the movements of the 7 birds closest to them. It's a collective energy that creates a consciousness larger than any individual bird. And we think we are so different, so separate in our little apartments and our little cars. But if you look at the way humans move through a city, or the way a trend spreads across the internet, you see the same murmuration. We are constantly adjusting our frequency to match the 7 people closest to us. We are part of a swarm we cannot see. And sometimes the dread you feel at night isn't your own dread. It's the collective energy of 1,000 people in your city, all worrying about the same thing at the same time. And you are just a bird in the middle of the cloud, feeling the shift of the wings next to yours. And the challenge for the modern soul is to learn how to feel the shift without being governed by it. To recognize the movement of the swarm, but to maintain the integrity of your own internal flight path. You're tuned to Dove and Serpent Radio. And tonight the silence feels a bit more crowded than usual. I once read about a clock in a village in France that stopped at exactly 4:12 in the afternoon in the year 1914. It was the moment the First World War reached their doorstep. And for 80 years, that clock stayed frozen. Even when the village was rebuilt, even when the children who saw it stop became old men and passed away. They say that if you stand near that clock at 4:12 on a quiet afternoon, you can hear a faint humming, like the sound of 1,000 people holding their breath. Time is not a straight line, my friends. It's a series of loops and folds. Some moments are so heavy, so dense with emotion and consequence, that they tear a hole in the fabric of the day. They become anchors. If you find yourself returning to the same memory over and over, or if you feel like you're living in a loop, it might be because you've stumbled into one of those heavy moments. Your frequency is snagged on a bit of history that refuses to move on. We think we're moving forward, but we're often just orbiting the massive weight of a moment that hasn't finished happening yet. The biology of our world is so much stranger than we're led to believe. There's a type of jellyfish that's effectively immortal. When it gets old or maybe injured, like, it doesn't die. It just reverts back to its polyp stage and starts its life cycle all over again. It's a circular return, a physical manifestation of the idea of rebirth. It makes me wonder what parts of ourselves are capable of that kind of transformation. We shed ourselves, we shed our beliefs, we shed our skin, but something stays. Something is the jellyfish that never dies. Maybe the soul family is just the name we give to the recurring patterns in our lives. The people who show up in every life cycle, just with different faces. You recognize the frequency before you recognize the features. You know the soul before you know the name. And it's a comforting thought, in a way, that we keep finding each other in the dark, age after age, signal after signal. The jellyfish reminds us that ending is often just a costume change for beginning. There's no such thing as a closed circle in a universe that is constantly expanding. I spent an hour today watching a spider weave a web in the corner of our porch. It is a masterpiece of engineering, a geometric prayer made of silk and intent. The spider doesn't go to school to learn how to do this. The blueprints are written into its very nervous system. It is performing a ritual that has been perfected over millions of years. When we create something, when we make magic or art or even just a well-cooked meal, we're tapping into that same ancient blueprint. We are letting the serpent in the blood do the work. The problem is that we try to think our way through it, try to use that modern brain of ours to do the job of the ancient one. But the best things we do are the things we do when we get out of our own way, when we become the vessel for the collective energy, when we let the signal flow through us without trying to edit it or polish it. The web is already there, inside you, waiting to be anchored to the world. You just have to trust the geometry of your own instincts. There was a man in the 16th century who claimed he could see the inner light of every living thing. He said that trees had a slow green glow, and that humans had a flickering, multicolored flame, right, that changed based on their thoughts. He was eventually silenced by the authorities of his time, of course, but because people were, always afraid of the things they can't measure. But I think he was just seeing frequency. He was just seeing the way our biology interacts with the unseen world. We are walking batteries, magic makers. We're constantly discharging and recharging. If you feel drained, it's usually because you've been around someone who's a ground. Right? Someone who just absorbs everything without giving anything back. And if you feel inspired, maybe it's because you've found a generator. We have to be careful about who we let into our electrical field. We have to protect our signal. Your aura is not just a metaphor. It is the electromagnetic consequence of your blood moving through your heart. It is the music your body makes when it is plugged into the source. You're listening to Dove and Serpent Radio, drifting through the deep hours where the secrets come out to play. I heard a little anecdote once about a woman who bought an old mirror at an estate sale. After she hung it in her bedroom, she started seeing things in the reflection that weren't in the room. Small things at first, a different color wallpaper, or maybe a chair that wasn't there, But then she started seeing a figure standing in the corner. It wasn't a ghost, she said. It was just a person from another time, living their life in a room that happened to occupy the same space as hers. The mirror was a thin spot, a place where the frequencies of two different eras overlapped. We think of hauntings as something scary, but maybe they're just interference. Like two radio stations playing over each other because the weather is right and the signal is strong. The world is full of these thin spots. You might find one in an old library or a forest clearing, or even in the middle of a crowded street. If you feel a sudden chill or a sense of displacement, don't run. Listen. There is a story trying to bleed through. The architecture of reality is not nearly as solid as the architects would have us believe. I think water is perhaps the most mysterious substance on Earth, It is the only thing that exists naturally in three states: solid, liquid, gas. It covers most of our planet and makes up most of our bodies. Some researchers believe that water has memory, that it retains the frequency of everything it has ever touched. And if that's true, every time you drink a glass of water, you're consuming the history of the world. You are drinking the sweat of a gladiator, the tears of a saint, the rain that fell on a dinosaur. We are literally made of memory. We are walking reservoirs of every experience that has ever happened on this planet. It is no wonder we feel so heavy sometimes. It's no wonder we have dreams of places we have never been. The water in our cells remembers. The serpent in our veins knows the way back to the beginning. We are the ocean, trying to remember what it felt like to be a cloud. I remember a night years ago. I was traveling through the mountains. I had pulled over to the side of the road because the fog was so thick I couldn't see the hood of my car. And I sat there in the silence. And just for a moment, the fog cleared. Just enough where I could see a city in the distance. A beautiful city. White towers, glowing lights. It was nestled in a valley that shouldn't have been there. So I looked at the map. There was nothing for like 50 miles. And the next morning when the sun came up, the valley was just empty space and jagged rocks. It was a fata morgana, a complex mirage that can project images from hundreds of miles away onto the horizon. I always wondered if it was something else. Maybe it was a city that doesn't exist in our version of reality. Maybe it was a glimpse of the place we go when we dream. The world is not just what we can touch. It is a layering of possibilities, and sometimes, if the light hits it just right, we get to see the other layers. We are living in a house with 1,000 rooms. And we spend most of our time in the kitchen because that's where the light is. We often talk about the soul family as if it's something we have to find, something out there in the world. I feel like it's more of a frequency we have to tune into. It's like this radio show. I'm broadcasting into the dark, and you're listening in the dark. We are connected by a thread of sound and intention. The people who are meant to be in your life are the ones who are on your same wavelength. You don't have to go looking for them. You just have to be yourself, loudly and clearly, and they will find you. The signal always finds the receiver. The serpent always finds its way back to the hole. The dove always finds its way back to the nest. When we try to force a connection with someone whose frequency is mismatched, we create static. We create noise. But when the resonance is right, the connection is effortless. It feels like remembering something you forgot you knew. I was thinking about the concept also of phantom limbs, people who have maybe lost an arm or a leg, but they can still feel it. They can still feel it itch. They can still feel it ache. They can even feel the wind on skin that isn't there anymore. It's just a profound mystery of the nervous system. The brain has a map of the body, and it refuses to let go of the parts that are missing. I think we have phantom memories too. We have these shapes in our minds of things we've lost, or things we've never even had. We feel the ache of a home we never lived in. We feel the itch of a talent we never cultivated. These are the phantom limbs of the soul. They are the evidence of the things we were meant to be or the things we were in another life. They're part of our internal architecture, even if they are invisible to the world. We are haunted by the potential of our own existence. We are the survivors of all the versions of us that didn't make it to this timeline. There's a certain kind of person who is a collector of moments, and you might be one of them, magic maker. You're the people who notice the way the light hits a brick wall at sunset, or the specific sound of dry leaves skittering across the pavement. You are the ones who save the ticket stubs and the pressed flowers and the weird stones you find on the beach. You're building a library of the uncanny. You are documenting the way reality leaks at the edges. And why do we do this? Because we know, deep down, that the normal world is just a thin veneer. We are looking for the cracks. We are looking for the places where the magic comes through. And when we find it, we want to hold on to it, even if it's just for a second. We want to prove to ourselves that we aren't crazy, that the world really is as strange and as beautiful as we suspect it is. Every stone you pick up is a piece of the wall you are building between yourself and the void. You're listening to Dove and Serpent Radio, where the air is thin and the thoughts are long. I was reading about a type of fungus that takes over the brains of ants, and makes them climb to the highest point they can find. And then it grows out of their heads and releases its spores to infect more ants. It is a terrifying example of biological mind control. But it also makes me think about the ideas that take over our brains. Some ideas are like that fungus. They compel us to do things we wouldn't otherwise do. They make us climb mountains or start revolutions or write 5,000 words in the middle of the night. Are we the masters of our thoughts? Or are our thoughts the masters of us? Are we just the ants, being driven by a signal we don't understand? The key, I think, is to recognize which ideas are the ones that nourish us, and which ones are the ones that are just using us to spread their own spores. The dove knows the difference. The serpent knows the difference. We have to learn to trust the taste of an idea before we let it grow roots in our skull. I often think about the concept of the double, right, or the doppelganger. In many cultures, seeing your own double is an omen of death, right? But in a psychological sense, we all have a double. We have the person we are in the world, and we have the person we are in our own heads. And sometimes, those two people are strangers to each other. We might look at a photo of ourselves and not recognize the person staring back. We might hear our own voice on a recording and think it belongs to someone else. This is the fundamental weirdness of being human. We are both the observer and the observed. We are the ghost and the house. If you can learn to be friends with your double, to let the I and the me have a conversation, you'll find a level of peace that most people never experience. You'll become your own soul family. You will realize that the person in the mirror is not an enemy or a stranger, but a partner in this long, strange navigation through the dark. There's a forest in Japan that is known for being a place where people go to get lost. It's so quiet there you can hear your own blood like rushing through your ears. People say that compasses don't work, that magnetic fields are distorted by the volcanic rock. But I think it's just a place where the frequency of the earth is so strong that it drowns out everything else. It's a place where you are forced to face yourself because there are no distractions. We all have a forest like that inside of us. A place where the signals of the world fade away, and we are left with only our own heartbeat. It is a scary place to visit, but it's also where the real work happens. It's where we find our true signal. You cannot find the frequency of the soul in a crowded room. You have to go to the place where the compass fails and the blood speaks for itself. I was talking to a friend the other day who said she felt like she was glitching, right? She'd be in the middle of a sentence and suddenly feel like she'd already said it, or like she would look at a familiar object and it would seem completely alien. And this is called jamais vu, the opposite of déjà vu. And it's when our brains fail to recognize something that it knows perfectly well. It's a temporary break in the continuity of our experience. And I really think those glitches are important. They remind us that our reality is a construction. It is a story our brain is telling us to keep us from being overwhelmed by the raw data of existence. When the story breaks, even for a second, we get a glimpse of the truth. We see the world as it actually is, chaotic, vibrating, a beautiful mess of energy, a vision of Pan. We see the serpent and the dove without the mask of normalcy. We see that the wall is actually a curtain and the wind is blowing it open. You're listening to Dove and Serpent Radio, and the night is beginning to turn toward the dawn. We have a few more miles to go before we reach the light. And I want to talk about the concept of synchronicity. Those moments where the world seems to align in a way that is just too perfect to be a coincidence. You think of a person and then they call you. You see a specific number everywhere you go. You find the exact book you need at the exact moment you need it. Carl Jung believed that these were meaningful coincidences, a sign that our internal world and our external world are connected by an underlying order. I think of them as the universe's way of winking at us. It's a reminder that the signal is always there, even when we aren't looking for it. It's a reminder that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. A collection of energy that is constantly communicating with us in the language of symbols and timing. If the universe is winking at you, it means you're finally in on the joke. I once found a message in a bottle on a beach in Florida, and it was a simple note written in a child's handwriting that said, "I am here." No name, no date, no address, just "I am here." And I kept that note for years. It felt like a message from the universe itself, And in the end, isn't that what we're all trying to say through our art, through our relationships, through our radio shows in the middle of the night. We are all just shouting into the void, I am here. And the miracle is that sometimes someone shouts back. Sometimes the frequency matches. Sometimes the signal is received. If you're hearing this, magic makers, then I am here, and you are here, and for this moment, that's enough. We are 2 points of light in a very large dark, acknowledging that neither of us is alone. The ancient Egyptians, they believed that the heart was weighed against a feather in the afterlife. And if your heart was lighter than the feather, you were allowed to enter the field of reeds, their version of paradise. If it was heavier, it was eaten by a monster. I think about that a lot. What makes a heart heavy? It isn't just sin in the traditional sense. It's the things we hold on to, the regrets, the secrets, the unfinished business. It's the weight of the past that we refuse to let go of. To have a heart as light as a feather, you have to be willing to flow. You have to be willing to let the water of your memory stay clear and moving. You have to be willing to trust the signal and let the noise fall away. The serpent knows how to shed its skin. We have to learn how to do the same. We have to learn that the heavy things don't protect us. They only keep us from flying when the flood comes. There's a star in the sky called Betelgeuse. It's a red supergiant. It's at the very end of its life, right? It could explode as a supernova at any moment. Or it might have already exploded hundreds of years ago, and the light just hasn't reached us yet. Maybe we're looking for a ghost. Maybe much of what we see in the night sky is just the memory of something that is already gone. And our lives are like that too. We are the light of stars that have already burned out. We are the echoes of ancestors who are long gone. But that light is still real. It still guides the traveler. It still illuminates the dark. Even when we are gone, our frequency will remain. Our signal will continue to travel through the universe, looking for a receiver. We are not just temporary bodies. We are permanent signals. Sometimes I think about the way a forest recovers after a fire. The ground is black and charred, and it looks like everything's dead. But deep underground, the roots are still alive. And the fire actually triggers certain seeds to sprout, seeds that may have been waiting for years for that specific heat. The destruction is a necessary part of the renewal. If you feel like your life is a scorched field right now, just remember the seeds. Remember the roots. The fire hasn't ended the story. It's just cleared the way for the next chapter. The serpent has to go through the fire to become the phoenix. The dove has to wait for the smoke to clear before it can find its way home. The heat that you're feeling is not meant to consume you. It's meant to wake up the parts of you that only grow in the flame. You're listening to Dove and Serpent Radio, and the amber light of the tubes is starting to compete with the first hints of gray in the sky. It's been a long journey tonight, through the blood and the brain and the stars. I hope you found something in these words that resonate with your own frequency. I hope you felt a little less alone in the dark. Because the truth is, we are all in this together. We are a collective energy, a soul family of seekers and dreamers and magic makers, all trying to make sense of a world that is much bigger than we are. We are the architects of a temple that hasn't been built yet, using the stones of our ancestors and the light of our own pineal eyes. And there's a quote I love, and I can't remember who said it. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. It's a simple turn of phrase, but it changes everything. It means that the weirdness we feel, a sense of being a passenger in our own skin, it's not a bug. It's a feature. It's the natural result of a vast, ancient consciousness trying to fit itself into a small, temporary container. Of course it leaks. Of course there are glitches. Of course we feel like we're more than what we see in the mirror, because we are. We are the signal, and the body is just the radio. We are the electricity, and the brain is just the light bulb. Don't mistake the glass for the glow. Now, as you go back into the world today, try to hold on to that feeling of being a bridge. Remember that you are the culmination of 1,000 near misses and 1,000,000 memories. Carry your history with you, but don't let it weigh you down. Listen for the synchronicity. Look for the cracks in the veneer. And most importantly, trust your gut. Trust the serpent that knows the truth and the dove that knows the way. You are never truly alone, magic makers. The entire universe is inside you, keeping the lights on, keeping the dream moving. Every cell in your body is a star that has come down to earth to see what it feels like to breathe. The world is about to start its noise again. The emails are waiting. The traffic is building. The mask is ready to be put back on. But you have this secret now. You have the signal. You know that the 2 a.m. silence is always there, just behind the curtain, waiting for you to return. And when the noise becomes too much, just remember the frequency. Remember the murmuration. Remember that you are part of a swarm that is moving toward the light, even when it feels like you're diving into the dark. You're not a solitary bird. You are the collective heartbeat of the world. There's an old story about a library that contains every book ever written and every book that ever will be written. And in that library, there is a book that tells your story perfectly. It lists every ancestor who contributed to your blood, every moment that shaped your mind, and every dream that your soul ever whispered. But the book isn't finished. You're the one holding the pen right now. You're the one who gets to decide how the next chapter ends. You have the weight of the past behind you, giving you momentum, but you have the freedom of the signal in front of you, giving you choice. Don't be afraid to write something strange. Don't be afraid to write something beautiful. Take one last deep breath of the night air before the sun takes it away. Feel the ancient atoms in your lungs. Feel the heartbeat of the world in your own chest. You are exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you are supposed to do. You are a masterpiece of collected effort, and you are beautiful. You are the answer to a question that was asked 1,000 years ago. I'm going to turn off the transmitter now and let the silence take over. But I'll be back whenever the hour is late, the world is quiet, and the signal is clear. I'll be here, broadcasting from the edge of the world to the center of your own heart. Stay true to your frequency. Stay open to the mystery. Stay connected to the soul family. The dark is not your enemy. It is your canvas. The silence is not an absence. It's a presence. Until next time, magic makers, stay strange in the silence and keep the dial somewhere between wonder and understanding.